And we're going to get started with the monthly Io-Tahoe webinar. We thank you very much for joining us. I'm Steve Friedberg, and this month's topic, as you can see on your screen, it's called Managing the Data Explosion in a Multi-Zettabyte World, the Need for Smart Data Discovery. And our guest this month is Ben Wu. Ben, how are you, sir?
I'm doing really well. It's good to talk to you, Steve.
Likewise. And you are in Boston today. You're usually based on the West Coast, as I believe.
I am now, yeah. So
That's
I'm
wonderful.
enjoying
Now,
the rainy Boston weather, actually. It was,
it could be worse. We had, 100 degrees here over the last couple of days. So you're in Boston at just the right time, I think. You've got the respite.
that's great.
Uh, for, for those of you who don't know Ben, he is the CEO of the analyst firm Neurolytics, as you can see. And he and I, again, I've said this before, Ben, with others, but one of the joys that I have about putting these webinars together is that I'm able to invite friends in, folks that I really enjoy talking with them, getting their insights, and enjoy their company. And you're right there with them. Ben used to be, several moons ago, the vice president of worldwide storage systems and big data over at IDC before he hung his own shingle. And he's quite opinionated, and I think you're going to enjoy this conversation. So, Ben, why don't we just get started? AI, everybody knows it in one form or another at this point who's on this call, uh, whether it's artificial intelligence, whether it's augmented intelligence, whatever you want to call it. But the question is going to be, how does this fit into the data realm?
Well, thanks, Steve. Look, at the end of the day, there is no question that data is continuing to grow. And I say continuing to grow. You know, for a long time, we have been in the industry analyst space, continuing to tell people, hey, guess what? There's an explosion of data. But we've been growing data since the year dot, since we could store it, since we could basically collect it. It's human nature to do that. Um, I want to refer you to a study that was done sponsored by Seagate, and done by my friends over at IDC. And what they came up with was, they continue to look at how big will it be in the future? How much data will we have? And based on their calculations, by the year 2025, so about 6 years from now, we're going to be holding on to 175 zettabytes of data. That's not petabytes, not exabytes, they're zettabytes. So that's one step closer to the, yottabyte scale. And the challenge that we have with holding on to all this data is, for the most part, a lot of people don't know what we have. Well, I'll give you a very personal and very simple example. I got shutter happy when my son was born, and in his first year, I think I took somewhere in the vicinity of 25,000 photos. Now, if you put that in some context, the little guy basically for the first year doesn't move. He may smile every now and then, and he's put in different clothes, but essentially the same little baby in 25,000 different positions. Okay. So the question is, what do I have? What pictures do I have of him? Where were they taken? Was he smiling? Is it really a picture I want to keep? The answer is, for me, is I don't know. Yet I have all 25,000 for sentimental reasons, for historic reasons. Now, if I want to embarrass him one of these days, I might want to find one of those photos. But now I've been searching 25,000. Right? It's like finding this needle in a haystack. And we are also creating situations in which we need some form of augmentation or replacement for trying to understand what data we have. If you click through the animation here, we are doing more in real time than ever before. For the simple reason that we can, right? Because we've got all these computers. So we end up in this situation of putting either lots and lots and lots of human heads together, and we know what that's like. It can be political. It becomes, pride and arrogance get in the way. We have too many ideas, too many cooks in the kitchen, or we apply a set of rules and ask the computer to do it, and let the computer go through 175 zettabytes of data, right? And I know who's going to win. We're going to have more useful information as a result of the analysis done by the computer than it would for humans to do it. And frankly, we just don't have the brain capacity to soak in 175 zettabytes, whatever the number is in your organization, right? To go through that information, that amount of data is physically impossible for humans. And that's why we need some sort of augmentation in our capacity to compute. So artificial intelligence, where we train and teach a computer certain rules and certain patterns, it can start looking for those patterns. It can start looking for those non-patterns and create new patterns out of that. So going back to that personal example of my son, being a little baby wrapped in swaddling clothes, whatever you want to call it, right? Um, we can use a computer to say, okay, we want to take out the picture of the baby itself because it doesn't move. It's pretty much the same all day long. But we want to start and understand what's behind it. Is he in the cot? Was he outside? Were there mountains in the picture? We can start to distill a lot more of the data that's around it and learn new things. Oh, we may come up with the fact that, yes, 20,000 of the 25,000 pictures were in his cot, sleeping, doing nothing. All right, now we have new information about it, right? But honestly,
But Ben, it's not only that data, but the very nature of data itself, I would suggest to you, has changed dramatically. I mean, from the
absolutely.
beginning of if you look back in 2010, we were dealing with structured data. We had documents, we had spreadsheets, we had some video, and now look at it. The data's coming at us faster than we can possibly imagine.
Right, and you know what, you make a really good point. And the data has grown and shrunk. IoT data, for example, there's a lot of it, but it's not very big. But at the same time, we've also increased data because we go to 4K, 8K, whatever the next K is in media entertainment world, and those files are
Hmm.
huge. So we have all of these types of structured and unstructured data coming towards us, and we need to try and integrate some of that together, right? Think about video security. That's that really creates a new challenge because we do have the structure of the IoT part of the video security camera, but we have the unstructured of the actual video stream. So you can see that in this particular diagram here, we've got so much data that is being thrown at us. On just to the left of the word endpoint, you see vehicles, right? The amount of data that autonomous vehicles and frankly any form of transportation generates is tremendous. It was suggested to me that there's a terabyte of data that is created by every flight of a 777 on every flight. Just the telemetry data, the safety data, etc., that is being collected. Right. Um, Now, one thing to note is that we don't have enough pipe in the world to transfer all that data all the time to everywhere. So we have to start doing things not always at the core, but even at the endpoint, right? We are putting a lot more computers into the planes. We're putting a lot more computers into our vehicles, right? Home automation, we're putting smarts into a light bulb. The next thing is because we can't move all this data around all the time and store all of it, we need to understand where is it stored, because that's going to impact on our ability to process it, right? And processing all this data is really about ingesting. It's about trying to categorize that data and trying to use that categorization to then create some sort of some semblance of usefulness, right? In this example, we have a bunch of words that describe the weather. Here in Boston right now, it's raining, but so we see the word storm and rain. But to some people, that's going to be a positive thing. They love the rain. For me, it's horrible. I hate getting wet, and I refuse to carry an umbrella, right? So now we have situations in which we can categorize not only what the type of data is, right? We have weather data, we have weather data that demonstrates that it's wet or not wet, whether it's precipitating or not. But then you have a new set of data, which is a sentiment. I hate rain. Other people love rain. So understanding where all of that data is stored and then trying to integrate them becomes also very difficult, right? So we need to understand A, where the data is coming from, and then B, where it's stored, so that we can do the C part, which is actually process it, right? And so you're going to see more and more data being created at the endpoints. So an endpoint is maybe your mobile phone or your car or an airplane or a drone, whatever that is, right? As opposed to the core, which is your data centers, whether it's at Amazon or Google or Microsoft, or on your own data center. Those core portions will be doing more aggregate analysis as opposed to the endpoint or the edges doing more immediate analysis and reactiveness to based on the data.
But part of it also, Ben, it would occur to me, and we've talked about this in previous webinars, is so-called dark data. In other words, the data that may be in your organization that you may not even know exists, or it hasn't been linked to other data. And that in itself may provide you with some significant insight, or may confirm or even contradict some of your previously held ideas.
Oh, absolutely. And dark data is is an interesting term because dark data in many ways is lost data until you figure out where it is. Um, so it actually, for me, dark data it poses more of a regulatory threat and compliance threat, and potentially reputational threat than the fact that it may or may not influence the outcome of some sort of analysis. I think the challenge we have with dark data is the fear that there's something in there that is going to have a negative impact on that organization's livelihood, right, or an individual's livelihood. Um, Dark data is not so dark when you realize that it's about um, infrastructure. If your infrastructure is properly linked, if your infrastructure is properly secured, you will be able to find that data. Um, so the challenge is, of course, is if somebody maliciously uploads or downloads that data to a USB drive or a disk drive and walks away with it, yeah, that's theft. That's different than dark data.
Mm-hmm.
That's just outright theft. Um, when we start to look at dark data, we need to really think about the fact that it's data we don't know that exists, but it is within our infrastructure and it is owned by the organization. So I think it's something that we can react to. It's something that we can go find with relatively small amount of effort, I think.
So, which then begs the question, regardless of whether we have dark data, lighter data, to coin a phrase, which may or may not be appropriate, I don't know. But the question is, how are we going to store all this stuff? You've already started to reference this,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that the Seagate/IDC study gives us a very clear indication of the trend, and
Yeah,
it's only going to be exacerbated over the next couple of years.
yeah. So I think what Amazon started with AWS and then subsequently with Microsoft with Azure and Google with Google Cloud Platform and others, right? Those are just the three bigger names in the industry. Is the fact that the, we transact a lot more through the web nowadays, right? Even with IoT and home automation, and all of those and industrial IoT, we tend to find a meeting point in the cloud. Now, that's the public cloud. So what we're
Hmm.
seeing and what's changing is that organizations are starting to realize, hey, guess what? We are developing new apps that are more appropriately hosted in the public cloud. We are collecting data through those apps, which are in the public cloud, and therefore probably makes sense to stay in the public cloud, right? And then they're injecting organizationally generated data through internal systems, and many of those systems are moving into SaaS services in the cloud. So you see this massive movement away from storing your information in house, right, or on in your own data center into the public cloud. And that's what this diagram is essentially showing you, that not only is more and more data being generated in the cloud, um, more and more data will end up being stored in the cloud. And that's significant,
Guys,
right? Because in many ways, when it's in the cloud, it's more accessible. It's more it's more durable actually, but and therefore you can do more with it as well.
yeah, but at the same time, and this may sound like I'm giving you a bit of pushback, to paraphrase Mark Twain, the reports of the data center's demise are greatly exaggerated. Uh,
Data
Over the
center,
last couple of years, we've seen a lot of stuff saying, "Oh, is the data center a thing of the past?" Of course not. There's a lot of data that needs to be stored on premises, but a lot of
absolutely
other data, increasingly, that can be stored in a public cloud.
right. And your paraphrasing of Mark Twain is very literally uh, in nature, but it has a lot of applications in the technology world. Think of the mainframe. People are still buying Z IBM mainframes, new ones, right? Um, Technology infrastructure or information technology infrastructure tend to hang around for a very, very, very long time, right? And the reason for that is because we don't want to change or we don't want to go fix something that ain't broke.
Right. I'm reminded of the thing. You know what the difference is between the network computer and the dumb terminal?
What's that?
Millions of colors. So let's go to the next step here. So we know that the public cloud is really emerging as a co-equal, according to this slide,
Mhm.
to the enterprise data center. But now we start getting back to what you were talking about earlier about data discovery
That's right.
and the need for smart data discovery.
Right. So basic data categorization is important, right? We need to know whether data is under any compliance requirements, either regulatory, either legislatively through government, or it could be corporate governance, right? The company wants to only keep data for this long, or the company intends to archive that data forever, whatever the policies are, right? But beyond that basic element, we also need to start to understand what data we have so that we can process it in a way that creates new value. What do I mean by that? Think of your dollar bill. You can put it in the bank and it could sit there, and over time, what happens? It devalues. It just does, right? Or you can go invest it. But where do you invest it? Do you pool it with others? Those decisions are the discovery element of this, right? It's the research around, so how much dollar bills do I have? Or actually, when you open that piggy bank, you realize you don't only have dollars, you have pounds, you have pesos, you have rubles, whatever it is, right? And you start to discover that there are new opportunities. Okay, I can't spend my rubles here in the States, but hey, what about if I convert them to American dollars? Or what about if I invest in Russia, in Russian stocks? Already you can see just by cracking that little piggy bank, that proverbial piggy bank open, and realizing you collected all these coins and banknotes over the years, that you have a lot of opportunity, right? And that's what smart data discovery is about. is not only understanding the fact that, hey, I've got $5 in the bank, or I've got $5 million in the bank, but it's also discovering the opportunities that you can, what you can do with that $5 million, right? Um, you can also understand how you got to that $5 million. So understanding how the customer sentiment, understanding how you got there, you can make that comparison as a against benchmarks in the industry. Are you making money the same way as your competitors? Are you ahead in certain areas? All of this knowledge, right, that you can garner from smart data discovery ends up in enabling you to make much more informed decisions about the future of your organization, right? And that becomes very, very
Hmm.
critical. If you know your competitiveness in the marketplace, you have a better chance of increasing your market share. If you understand how you differ from your competitors and why they're doing certain things that might be enabling them to grow faster, you may be able to emulate or even make it better, right? But it's all about this very basic computer science 101 concept of taking data, understanding it, and making it into information, allowing humans to take that information to turn it into some sort of knowledge that can be applied to do something to create value, right? I don't
So
know.
you're really moving far beyond just mere analytics.
Oh,
You're getting into what everybody is referring to as insight.
exactly, right? And not only is it insight in the sense that now I know what's going on, you can use computers to understand and predict what might happen. And this is the great thing about machine learning and artificial intelligence. You can take all this insight, as you call it, knowledge, however you want to put it, right? And you can teach the computer about how you got there and say, computer, simulate this situation. And you can have a simulated outcome as well. You know what? That was a bad decision, right? You can simulate the market conditions moving forward, and you can see what happens without actually doing it, um, based on certain market conditions. And therefore, you can be much more dynamic with your decisions. You can say, hey, look, we planned for this. We modeled 5 different things. Uh, Model two is the most accurate in terms of what's happening today. We followed that path, right? Um, More informed decisions uh, make for better chances of increasing market share.
And let me ask you this. You have talked with a number of companies, a number of people in these companies for years.
Hmm.
And what you're saying here makes, at least to me, obvious sense. But as you talk to these people, how many of them get it? How many of them do not get it? And at what levels of the organization are we talking about? Because one of the things that we've always been told is if you're going to implement a new initiative, you really need buy-in at the top levels of the organization. You need a champion.
Hmm.
Are the champions there? Do they not get it? What?
Oh, they absolutely get it. I think that there might be some challenges in the operational aspect. Um, Trying to understand all the data that you have and categorizing it is not easy, right? It's like if you had 10 years worth of receipts and you try to garner some insight out of that. You got scan them all, read them all that sort of stuff. So, in fact, that's probably a hat box full of receipts for the last 10 years is probably the best analogy of what's going on today. We have the information, we have the data that's there. It's useful, we know that, right? Because we see how we spend money, how we got money, all that sort of stuff. Um, but it's going through it, and it's that process of going through it and prioritization of that process which creates some challenges operationally. Number one, um, some of that information is private, right? And privacy becomes a very big challenge because of all the laws that are around the world. We may lose
Hmm.
some of that data in countries and regions in which you have the right to be forgotten, right? So we need to go through and mask some of that data. We need to make sure that it's not exposed in these new processes, right? We don't want people, just because we're creating some sort of data gathering capability within the organization, we don't want that to become a leak or a problem moving forward into the future. So um, those types of challenges slow down the process in terms of um, how you get to the value portion of it.
Mhm. As a matter of fact, you were referencing the right to be forgotten. We're seeing a lot of stories now about this is the 1 year anniversary of GDPR.
Yeah.
And from what I've seen, and tell me if I'm off base here, there's indications that the regulators are starting to crack down perhaps to a greater degree in the second year of its implementation rather than they were the first.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we already saw British Airways being hit with a fine, and a pretty big one at that, right? And
Right.
we're going to probably see a lot more. I think last year was more a discovery year for the regulators. Now they're going to
Mhm.
show some value. They finally passed this law that took years to get through, and now we're going to see its implementation. It's not easy. It's absolutely not easy, especially for multinational companies, especially for companies that um, are part of a broad base of services like Google, to be honest with you, right?
Hmm.
Google to forget you, it offers so many different things. It's going to forget you in the right way. So again, all of those things are costly and takes time.
And given the fact that most companies don't have the $5 billion or whatever that some of the big companies do,
Hmm.
the question is, as you see here on the slide, what do you do? If
Yeah.
you are going to really get a firm grasp of the data, not only the data that you have, but also the data that's flowing in. Somebody turned on the spigot and forgot to turn it off. It's coming in by the minute. What do you do? How do you get better control of it?
Well, I think the most important thing is taking up an inventory of your data and understanding where the hell is the data. I'm sorry, but it's really that simple, right?
Such
Um,
language, why I never.
I know. You know, it's funny to me that a CIO nowadays may not ever walk into his data center or a data center because A, it's they're distributed, and B, because they're so busy doing everything else. You know,
Mhm.
just simply walking through your data center and understanding where there could be data is the first step. The second step is understanding, and more to the point, remembering. It's not so much understanding, but remembering that there's data in the cloud. And data in the cloud, even though people think, oh, it's just one big bucket, it's not. It is as siloed as it is on a physical data center. So trying to take inventory of that. Um, and then next, just having the insight to remember that there are data being stored on laptops, phones, USB drives. You know, those are basic security concerns that need to be dealt with, and that's pretty much something that has to be taken into consideration. So we look for companies not allowing USB drives to be used on laptops is probably a good
Mhm.
start. What you've lost, you've lost. Hopefully, it's not negative. But also helping your employees not save data locally, but saving onto a corporate drive, whether it's in the cloud or in a data center. So for two reasons: one, it's more secure, and two, it encourages collaboration or easier collaboration, right? So
Mhm.
avoiding saving information locally and then saving it uh, in a shared service of some sort. Um, that takes care of your endpoints, and then many of this new data that's coming in from all over the place. It's about understanding the structure and the nature of that data. And the first question to ask is it under regulation? Is it under compliance?
And right there, you've got a very, to me at least, an important question. There are so many different regulations out there
Mhm.
that, in one way or the other, are not quite the same. GDPR is one, CCPA is another, the Brits have theirs. A number of states throughout the United States are looking at their version. So, what would you advise companies to do? There's all these different laws that may be slightly different in one way or the other. How are they going to comply? How are they going to make sure that they're living up to the spirit, if not the letter of the law?
How do they comply? Well, the compliance is really a function of getting your lawyers together. But there's certainly software out there now that can help. I
Yeah.
think the fact that we have to understand any piece of data that we collect about an individual anywhere in the world should be considered private, no matter how you think about it. And it should go into your database in a way that is completely secure. um, if we collect any personal information, phone numbers, addresses, email addresses, any way that any identifying information, for some companies, they already take this step to the nth degree. Everything to them is private, right? And is bound by regulation to the highest degree. Some of the challenge comes though uh, when there are conflicting uh, legislations and regulations, um, and when you have data that travels across borders. Part of the thing about the internet is we can reach a lot of people very easily, right? I remember in bulletin board days, back in the mid '90s or even
Hmm.
the late '80s, right? That was a big deal. I could speak to somebody halfway around the world for free, essentially. That's great. But now we have laws that tell us that data can't travel. Well, then, if it can't travel, how do we interact? How do we understand our business as a whole? That those are conflicting objectives, right? So,
Hmm.
what can customers do? Engage some consultants. There are plenty of them out there. I'm sure they're very, very good to help you read through all of those legislations, remembering also that if you are on the web, you essentially transact with the world, right? That's something that is not here on the slide, but if you're operating anything on the World Wide Web, you are operating globally.
Point well taken. Point well taken. And if we go back to the third part on this slide, that the human mind is finite.
Yes.
With all this stuff that's coming in from the transactions literally around the world,
Mhm.
how do you get hold of it? And you have to be able to get hold of, to use your example about the receipts from 10 years previous, not only those receipts, but the ones that are coming in from all over the world, literally by the second. You
Mhm.
need to be able to figure out what you have in order to be able to analyze them and gain the insights that we talked about earlier.
Right. One of the things about a computer of any sort, however big or small it is, it has the capability of doing combinations and permutations and pattern matching and finding patterns and those at a very fast speed. So that's where the augmentation of artificial or virtual or however you want to look at it, intelligence comes into play. The great thing about the human mind is its imagination, right? We can imagine a lot of great things, and that's what we should be doing, using the mind to create and imagine and envision what the outcome
Hmm.
is that you want, and then try and understanding the process and translating that to the computer, teaching the computer what that process is, and allowing the computer to do its job, which is to see if it matches that process, and then to try new things, right? Um, but the first thing you need to know is what do you have, and this is where smart data discovery really comes into play.
Absolutely. I mean, but again, it's something that we've talked about here, that artificial intelligence, augmented intelligence, smart data discovery are fine, but they are not the means to the end. They are not the end in itself. You need the human interaction to really put things into perspective, to gain those insights.
So let's be distracted for a second. You know, we watch all
Okay.
we watch all these movies out there about, you know, science fiction movies about how robots will take over the world. Well, the robots can only take over the world if we teach it how to. Right? That's what it comes down to. Robots are limited to what the human imagination is, but the robots themselves cannot imagine. So anything that we teach the computer, it can do. Now, some people would argue, well, predictive analysis would therefore be imagination. Predictive analysis is a function of the human mind, and humans teach it how to be predictably informative. So we need to always come back to the fact that it's only as good as what the humans tell the computer to do, right? So the human element, to your point, will never, ever, ever go away. In fact, it's critical, because without humans, computers don't know what to do. They'll be twiddling their proverbial thumbs.
So let's start wrapping this. Let's start. Go ahead.
I was asking, do computers have thumbs? Are they opposable? Well, the answer is no. They neither have thumbs nor are they opposable. Therefore, they cannot be so intelligent. I'm not sure what the application of that is in the real world. But go on. Let's sum it up here.
No, I'm just going back to the idea of cats not having opposable thumbs, nor do dogs, so they can't use the. Yeah. Oh, but they will with the introduction of the Microsoft opposable thumb. Yes, anyway.
All right, let's
start summarizing.
Yeah, look, data growth is not new. You know, as an analyst, I don't know how many reports I've read from others and from my own teams in the past. You know, guess what? Data is growing at exponential rates. Guess what? Data's been growing at exponential rates for the last 35, 40 years, ever since the introduction of commercial computing back in probably the 60s, and even before that, honestly. So let's not get too overwhelmed with the concept. Let's just understand that this concept of data growth is not ever going to go away, right? And with the legislations and compliance and regulations, corporate compliance and governance, we're going to create a lot of metadata, data about data, right? So that we can conform to these regulations. The introduction of privacy laws, etc., will create new metadata that describe the actual data, but we have to create new metadata because this new metadata has to be in some way masked and non-identifiable. So not only is data growing at its, what I would call, normal rates, but we're actually accelerating that growth by the creation of new data to support the legislations and the requirements that humans have decided we need to do. So in other words, it's our fault for putting us all in the same position. So we're accelerating growth because we're creating new data that tells us about old data. And as we create new data, we'll figure out new ways of creating new data that tells us about the old new data and the old data and the original data, you know. So we can keep going with this analogy. Bottom line, data growth, acceleration of data growth, need for compliance, and need to treat data with respect, and you know, and the fact that it's only going to keep growing.
So, hey, Ben, so here's your thought. IDC and Seagate came up with the figure of 125 zettabytes by 2025. Listening to you, I'm almost inclined to think that may be a bit conservative. What do you think?
Well, not necessarily. One of the things that
okay.
report will have taken into account is the fact that we duplicate a lot of data, right? In the next 6 years, as we reach 2025, some of that new data that's created will be metadata. In fact, a lot of it will be metadata. Metadata is
Okay.
not typically very, very big. But at the same time, we also will be able to normalize, using a database term, some of the data that's sitting out there. We repeat data a lot, right? A simple example is when we send out an email with an attachment and everybody decides to download that attachment to read it. If there are 10,000 people in the company, now we have 10,000 copies of it. So we will have technologies that will be more capable of reducing the duplication of data that persists today. So the balance of the two will, I think, mean that that number is about right.
So taking it one step further, now if we assume that this is the situation as is,
Yep.
Here's what companies need to do.
Right. So we've acknowledged that data is growing. We've acknowledged that compliance is going to make this data grow faster. And compliance both with governments, corporations, as well as individuals, right? Privacy is about individuals. So we need to understand what data we have. We need to take stock of all the data we have, what might be sensitive, et cetera, et cetera. We need to understand all the legislation and the regulations and the core policies that are out there. And I think it's not a resignation, but I think if you look at it, the fact that humans are not possible to comb through all this data and the incoming data, which is coming in at a faster rate than it did before, and come up with opportunities for strategic advantage or for competitiveness. If you recognize this, and I say not being resigned to it, but just recognize it, then you can turn this into a real positive for you and your company. I think this is really, at the end of the day, what it's all about.
And of course, I would be remiss if I did not mention that Io-Tahoe does have smart data discovery as a product offering that can, as you say here, offer a strategic advantage. Let's start wrapping things up. Ben, if they want to find the report, golly gosh, where can they find it?
Yeah, actually, it's hosted on Seagate's site. Since they sponsored it, I put the link right there. If you need to find me, please feel free to email me or find me on Twitter. If you can, don't forget that underscore at the end. That's the trick.
Yeah, there is another Ben Wu, and his tweets are apparently locked down. So, Ben Wu, I thank you so much. It's always a delight getting together with you. And I thank you. And for those of you who have joined us and been with us throughout the entire webinar, I want to thank you very much as well. In the meantime, I'm Steve Friedberg. For Ben Wu and myself and everybody here at Io-Tahoe, we thank you very much for joining us and wish you a good day.
Have a great summer.